Hello everyone, today I'm doing a no-nonsense guide to the science of table selecting. Table selecting has been a very important part to my game, and I think is one of the only reasons why I've been able to achieve double-digit big blind per 100 win rates all the way up to NL100 in my current poker journey. So if you do play on a site that allows you to table select, you play on regular tables, you'll be doing yourself a huge service by taking this advice and table selecting as much as you possibly can. So without further ado, let's just get straight into it. So first of all, when we table select, the one thing that we want to look for is player tags. So we tag players so that we can quickly look through the client to figure out what types of players are playing at which tables, so we can figure out what tables we want to play at and where we want to sit. So first we have to figure out the criteria for making tags. I have four main tags for player types. The first are whales and maniacs, also known as fish. These are the players that have a VPIP of over 40. These are your bread and butter players. These are the worst players you're going to see in these games. They lose money at an unbelievably fast rate, and you should be trying to play with these players whenever possible. They are absolute jet fuel for your win rate, and these are the players that we want to be singling out and targeting and following around whenever we can. So there's two different types. There's the maniacs and the whales. While some of them are very passive and some of them are very aggressive, either one is going to be an absolute killing for your win rate. So the second most profitable players that we can play against are recreational players. Now, these are a little bit harder to define, but essentially they have a VPIP of above 12 but below 30. Large gap between their VPIP and PFR, usually 7 points or more, is the main distinguishing factor for these players. They might have a decent VPIP, but they're going to have such a big gap between the VPIP and PFR. They're definitely not a good thinking regular. They are not going to really understand what they're doing and probably be playing and making some very poor decisions post-flop as well. So also, any player that has a VPIP in their mid to high 30s is also certainly a recreational player. They're not quite as profitable to play against as whales and maniacs, but they certainly are got plenty of leaks to exploit in their pre-flop opening ranges. So next we have the regulars. So these are the players that we want to be avoiding when we can, and we want to be making sure that we are not getting situated against aggressive regulars directly to our left. So regulars are players that have VPIPs between 30 and 16 that only have a small gap between the VPIP and PFR, usually around 7 or less points. The best regulars have a gap of about 2 to 4 points between their VPIP and PFR. So you could also differentiate between good and bad regs if you want to further separate them in your tagging system, but you're going to need a pretty large sample size to tell about 1K to 2K hands to really differentiate between a good or bad reg. And the last player tag I have is for nits. These are the people that have VPIP of 12 or less. This is a pretty simple category. They are just sitting around waiting for the nuts. They're really simple to play against. Steal the blinds as much as possible. 3-bet them late if they are the types that like to fold to 3-bets, and just give them the pot if they play back at you and you don't have a hand. Also set mine them. They usually don't fold their overpairs. So these are all the kinds of tags that I like to create for players. And just to quickly go over the sample size I like to have before I tag a player, for whales and maniacs, you pretty much only need 20 to 25 hands to be pretty sure that this player is a huge fish. Recreational player is the same kind of thing, about 25 to 50 hands. You can tell this guy is probably going to be a recreational player. Regulars, you need about 100 hands usually to figure out kind of where they're at and what they're doing. And to differentiate between good and bad regulars, again, you're probably going to need 1 to 2,000 hands. And nits, you're probably going to need about 100 to 200 hands to figure out if they are just a regular who's not getting, or is kind of card dead, or actually a nit. So moving on to actually figuring out where to sit at a table. The best seat that we can sit at is known as the Jesus seat. This is a seat that's going to have one or more whales or maniacs to our direct right, and it's going to ensure that we have position on these players as often as possible. So this is going to make it, or allow us rather, to isolate their limps to 3-bet them, to absolutely pound on fish over and over and over again, constantly being in position and constantly getting involved with pots with them in order to frustrate them and to extract as much money from them as quickly as possible before the other players can get it. And also, the seat that we want to be avoiding is avoiding the seat that has an aggressive opponent, someone who 3-bets about 11 to 20% of our steals sitting directly to our left. If this is the case that we have a regular or even a recreational player sitting directly to our left who has this super aggressive 3-bet tendency, we usually just want to be leaving the table. It's not worth trying to fight them, especially when there's better tables to play at. And most players at the micro and small stakes are not going to have this super aggressive 3-bet tendency, especially if we don't roll over and die every single time we're 3-bet and we put in some 4-bets and some calls versus 3-bets as well. But ultimately, if we're playing against somebody who's aggro 3-betting us, there's no reason to get into an ego war with them. They have an overwhelming advantage being in position, and we should just leave that table. The only exception to that is usually if we have a Jesus seat and there's still an aggro 3-better to our left, then we want to still play at the table because the whales and maniacs to our right are going to be more profitable than losing a steal attempt or an isolate attempt every so often. So a lot of players on sites such as Ignition and Bovada don't have the opportunity to properly table select. So how do we table select with unknown players? And this is also true in stars when you're moving up to a new stake and you don't exactly know any of the regulars or players, and so you're just trying to figure out who's the fish, who are the regulars, and what tables should I be playing at? Because especially when you're taking a shot, you want to give yourself the best opportunity to, do well so you don't have to move back down. And you need to figure out what tables have the worst players at them. So the average pot size is typically the indicator I go for when I don't know the player's tendencies at the table. I usually check the average pot size. The higher the average pot size, the more fish and maniacs and such who are just gambling and splashing around, and it's usually where I'll be trying to sit. Another really good tip, if your site allows it, and I know Stars certainly does, is just to observe a table for a few hands with unknown players. Your Pokertracker might already kick in and start gathering data on these players, and you can try to find someone who's limping or playing wildly and then snipe the seat directly to their left so that you can have position on them and, do all the good stuff we just talked about with position. So especially for players in Ignition who don't know, or other similar sites that have anonymous seating, even though you play at the table for like 20 to 30 hands, you might find there's actually no fish at the table. There's nobody who seems overwhelmingly bad, or maybe there's an aggro 3-better directly to your left. You can just leave and find a new table. That's completely fine, and you should be doing that as often as possible. All right, well, that covers everything. I hope you guys enjoyed my no-nonsense guide to table selecting. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and leave any feedback in the comments below or what kind of video you want to see next. Thank you, guys. Have a nice day. Bye.